Hello, and welcome to the Kaizen Academy podcast. I'm Justin, and I'm here with my co-host Cal. How you been, Cal?
I've been good, thank you.
Been
Oh,
good?
sorry. Yeah, I've been alright, the usual.
That's
The
good.
usual.
Today, we're going to be going through something fun, something a bit different. We're going to be going through a tier list of different study techniques.
Wow. I feel like we're jumping on all the YouTube trends
Yeah.
with this one. What's next? What's another YouTube trend that we can do next?
Oh,
Tier
I don't know.
list?
Tier list. We can start
What
streaming.
else? Oh, true. Just
Start
hop on
playing
Twitch
Among
right
Us.
after this.
That one's still going on.
That's still really popular, man. Like everything
re-
just Among Us.
I recently started getting into VTubers. Have you seen that?
What's that? Nah.
It's like those they're streamers, but they're like anime characters. So they've got like an anime avatar. I'm sure you've
Yeah.
seen like thumbnails of it and stuff.
Yeah.
And dude, it's a rabbit hole, man.
What?
I was very skeptical when my friend started telling me about them, but
Okay,
let
yeah.
me tell you, I am sold now.
What the hell? What the hell? I feel like this is like... Yeah,
Let me tell you
go
about
for
it, Cal, alright?
Okay, describe. Okay, justify it for yourself.
Let me
Make a
justify
case.
my life choices.
Okay, go for it.
So like what they are is like essentially like all of the streamers are like they're very talented. They're like very good at talking. They're just like very entertaining to watch
Okay, yeah.
because they're actually just hired by a company. So all of these, or like there's a main
Whoa.
group called HoloLive,
Yeah.
which is like a company, and then they actually just hire these streamers. So they're not individual people.
Yeah.
They just like popped up this like anime avatar and started like streaming.
Yeah.
They're actually like pretty high production quality. They've got a whole team behind them, but then they've also got the freedom to just do whatever they want as streamers.
Yep.
And then they all interact with each other as well because like they're all part of the same company, right? So they organize like collab streams and stuff. So once you get into one,
Yeah.
you kind of get exposed to all of them.
Yeah.
And it's just something about like cute Japanese girls, bro. They just, the way they
Oh,
talk,
bro.
they just talk in a very cute way. Man.
No, just... This does not need to be broadcasted. Wait, but like... I feel like it's like 2 degrees away from being like ultimate weeb. Like, you know what I mean? Like, is it... Is it not?
I mean,
like...
I'm pretty weeb, so
Okay, true. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Obviously, nothing wrong with that. That's a good point. That's a good point. You do you. You know what I mean?
true.
We gotta be happy with our life choices and what we do. I think that's gotta celebrate it. I'm here to celebrate it. To be honest.
Me, man.
I'm here to celebrate it 100%. I saw one of the really popular streamers do it as well. Like they changed for like one of their streams
Yeah,
to like a virtual thing.
yeah.
But like, what do they do? So like these virtual streamers, they're entertaining. What do they do? They just do anything else. They just play the most popular games usually as well.
Yeah, they usually play whatever they want. Like there was one where she was playing like GTA 5. That was like a really entertaining series. I think they played Minecraft at some point, but it's really like they do whatever.
Interesting. Do you think it's the game itself, or it's genuinely the character that they're portraying?
It's
That's
the
really
character.
interesting.
It's like
Wow.
whoever they're hiring, bro. These girls know what they're doing.
Man, why are you gonna say it like that, man? God damn.
Back
As in
to-
they're entertaining. They're entertaining.
Sorry. Okay.
Like they know what they're doing in terms of an entertainer, right? Just like
Yeah.
yeah, I got you. Okay, cool.
All right. Enough about my VTuber adventures.
Yeah,
Let's jump into
We're
this
on
tier list.
tier list
So,
today.
so we've got 5 tiers. It's Eddie Wu, then great, decent, meh, and then terrible. And
Yep.
the kind of situation I want to set up as the for how we're going to judge this is how good is this technique used for studying for exams specifically. So
Yeah.
like a lot of techniques they might not be suited for exams, but if you're in the workplace or if you're in just studying like on your own, they could be very effective. But what we're going to be focusing on is this
Oh.
effective for school or for uni for doing well
Yeah.
in an exam context?
Yeah.
And we're going to be talking about, we're going to be considering this for basically all subjects, so not math specifically or anything, just
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
So the first thing up, making notes. I've got a little owl here.
Yeah.
He's making notes. What are your thoughts on making notes, Cal?
I think, first off, kind of a bit broad, because it's like, I think there are making notes, definitely levels to it, and I feel like certain techniques of making notes are a bit more effective than others. But it feels very essential, so it's hard for me to dismiss like, oh, making notes, it's not important, because I guess for me, I'm very old school, and kind of thinking about how I've found my success in high school. Like, I think making notes definitely important in certain contexts. Like, I feel like for maths, probably not as important, but as like maybe like I don't know, maybe like a English, or one of those, or another, or even like physics, or the sciencey subjects. I think notes play a big role. You know what? Yeah. Nah, I'm gonna give notes some credit. That's my take on it. I wouldn't put it too high, but I definitely think it's one of those things where it's kind of like your foundation going into, like, say, going into an exam prep period kind of thing. To have a set of notes that you've made yourself, I think is very important, as opposed to, say, relying on a source that isn't your own. I think there's something very organic about writing your own set of notes, even if it is just copying down stuff. I think when you write your own set of notes, there is a deep bond with it. So then, when you need to reference it, I think there is something, I don't know, there is something about it. Like, I've always found it very helpful for myself, particularly writing notes and writing my own notes. But then again, we're talking about preparing for an exam. I've always found making notes to be an early thing, something you do very early on. And like, say, leading up to an exam, it's something that you've already had. And so it's something that you can once in a while refer back to. This is hard.
I for sure agree. Like, so when I say for an exam context, I just mean like in school, like in general. So,
Okay.
I definitely think like making notes has its place. Like,
Yeah.
it's not like you were hinting towards just then. You don't want to be making notes like a week before your exam.
Yes,
Because there
that's
are
the thing.
more time efficient things that you could be doing.
Yeah.
But early on in the term, or like early on in the semester, making notes is very valuable. But I feel like there are a couple of caveats to like making good notes, right?
Okay, yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of ways you can go wrong with it, and a lot of ways that it can kind of turn into pseudo work rather than something that's actively pushing your learning.
Yeah.
So I think like making notes, it serves two primary functions. Number one is when you make something, you tend to remember it a lot better, right? Because you've actually got to process that information, and then when you like write it out in your own words, you're actually like forcing your brain to like work through it, and you actually remember it better. That's one. And the second is that you're also making an artifact for you to revise later. And because it's your own notes, like you were saying before, you'll remember it a lot better. Because I think when you make notes for yourself, you tend to focus on things that are not obvious to you, if that makes sense. So like, you tend to zone in on things and put in more detail things that you don't really understand.
Yeah.
And things that are like completely obvious to you, maybe you'll just have like one line in it.
Yeah, that will come natural. Like, when you're writing the notes, the things that you find difficult will take a little longer to actually put down into words, process. They'll take a little while, but in doing so, you actually get to kind of like run through your understanding with like a fine-tooth comb, and like actually weed out what you're weak with, what you're strong with, as opposed to reading someone else's set of notes. It's like the things that you might struggle with and you don't actually know that you're struggling with. As you're reading through, they might not struggle with the same things, and then you're like, oh yeah, you might just read through like a brief paragraph of whatever that topic is, and kind of just move on and not really understand your own struggles. I think that's really important. And it always feels so foreign reading someone else's set of notes. It's just never it never sits right with me. No matter how many times I've tried.
I 100% agree. And we've actually got this down here. reading other people's notes.
Okay.
So
Exactly. Okay,
we're
we'll
gonna come
save
back
that
to
for
this
later.
one. Yeah, we'll save that
Yeah,
for later.
we'll save that for later. But yeah, I think making notes super important. Like it's more of like a support thing. I think, like you were saying, writing. I'd say the most important about making notes is actually making the notes itself. I have a feeling that most students can honestly throw away the notes after, and it might not even make that big of an impact to them after, like later on, because I think a majority of the work is put into the making process, like you writing, processing through all the information, and kind of consolidating, and it almost like a lot of times when students, what I find is when students write like notes for a whole topic, it kind of gives them a better perspective because as they write through it, they get a chance to like step back and see how the whole topic kind of plays itself out and connects with one another, like how each subtopic kind of like connects with each other. It gives them that kind of macro view, or macro view, macro view, kind of like to kind of see how everything comes together and see how how everything fits together, I guess. And I think that's really important. I think that's one of the things that students don't really get as they're learning through things, because as you're struggling, when you're struggling through topics, it always feels like so overwhelming. But like when you're writing the notes, you always get like this appreciation, like, oh, so that's what I'm learning, or that's the whole topic. Oh, it's not even that long, or it's not even that much of a topic. It's not that hard. I think that experience is probably what I find most important. Having the notes after, I don't think it's that important. I know some students might need to use it. Let's say like you've written your own notes, and then you're doing past papers, and then you notice that you struggle with this thing. I think it's a good time for you to go back through your notes and find that one part and revise it. But besides that, the notes itself, not as crazy. Like I don't think it's as imperative as like actually writing the notes out itself.
So like the primary function of making notes is not actually getting notes so that you can revise later. The primary function is actually the act of doing it. Will
Oh
help
my
you,
God,
like,
yes.
Remember what you've been like writing about, right?
Yeah. I feel like every student needs to hear that. Like that's because I think they lose focus. Like when they're told to make a set of notes, it's like, oh, it just feels so generic. It feels so useless. Because at the end of the day, it is useless. Like I think a lot of students will find it that once they write the set of notes, they don't even use it, and then they're gonna be like, "Oh, teacher's always telling me to write notes. It's so useless. I never end up using it." It's like it's not the using part. It's that they want you to write the notes. They want you to consolidate what you've learned, try to like process through it and reword it. Kind of make it your own. And through that kind of, I guess.
Through making
grow
like,
closer
process,
to the content. But that's basically it. I think that's kind of the crux of it, isn't it? But where would we put that?
A little bit.
Yeah.
I just wanted to run through like a few things of how to make notes correctly. So like what you were saying before, making the notes your own is like the key part. So things like highlighting or like transcribing like word for word what's in the textbook or what's in the lecture slides, I think is a very poor way to do it. I think what you should be doing is like rewording what you're learning in your own head, like adding your own like input, adding your own understanding to your notes is what is going to really help you process that information better.
Even just using synonyms, you know what I mean? Like, and I think students also they kind of underrate that bit there, just because they go, oh, if I copy it, that's the sentence. If you force me to reword it, it's the same sentence. Like they don't feel. I don't think they realize the gravity of the situation, how important that is. Just to, even if you swap words out and you put words in, I think even tricking your brain into thinking that you wrote that sentence is much more effective than having an exact carbon copy of what is in the textbook or what you've read in the textbook. For me, and that's kind of like, I guess, kind of the importance of, man, sometimes people are like, oh, English is such a useless subject or whatever. Why do I even learn English? You know what I mean? Like, I don't learn anything. But I think being able to articulate what you're reading and articulate it in your own way, so important. And that's probably what you're going to be doing as you're writing the notes.
Yeah, that's a super useful skill. All right. What do you reckon, Cal? I'm feeling decent. I don't think it's a great technique.
Yeah. I was thinking halfway through decent and great. I was thinking these. Yeah, I think decent. Decent should be right. Yeah.
Okay, we're in agreement. Making
Let's
notes.
try not to go too high.
Yeah, first one, putting it in the middle is pretty good.
Yeah. It's like a reference point. Or else it's like Eddie Wu and there's like, oh crap, and then there's gonna be even better ones. Okay. Got it.
Okay.
Making
Next
notes
up,
decent.
textbook questions. So maths, that's a very common thing in maths.
Yeah.
Maths is all textbook questions essentially. But even in like things like physics textbooks, they do have their own questions there and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, how do you feel working through these questions? How useful is that?
Textbook questions. Once again, though, not all textbooks created equal. I think that needs to be said, right? There are definitely some textbooks out there that are a bit just easier, right? So I think doing textbook questions, I think we'd both agree, just kind of having taught like for the past year and kind of making all the content that we've been making, I think we've just realized that there is a bit of a disconnect between some textbook questions and then what you might find in an exam. So I think in that sense, it loses some credit. So it's like textbook questions are good because practice is practice. You know what I mean? You practice. You got to practice. But I think sometimes you're practicing, I don't know how to say it, but it's like,
it's kind of tangential to like what you're actually doing in the exam, right? It's like it's similar-ish, but it's not quite there.
Yeah.
So there's like a bit of a loss in like transfer.
It's kind of like, when you go to the gym, it's like, go to the gym and let's say you bench, right? It's a compound movement and it uses like your chest and uses all these things. And then compare that to like doing like an isolated exercise. It's like, let's say I do wrist curls or something like that. You know what I mean? Like working one specific muscle. It's not going to help. It's not going to be as helpful in terms of like, cause I guess I'm assuming when you do compound movements, you kind of make yourself stronger. And I feel like it becomes, okay, you know what? I take that back. Compound movements are probably not as whatchamacallit, like
I really
applicable
like
in your everyday life though. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I want to jump in real quick, Cal.
Okay, go.
I really like this analogy.
Yeah.
Questions are kind of like the machines of
Yes,
the gym.
yes.
And your exam questions are like your free weights. So if you're
Yes.
going to be doing like free weight bench press, you don't want to be going to the bench press machine and doing it because it's similar-ish. It will transfer over a little bit. It will transfer over a decent amount, but you're not going to be able to do anywhere as near as much weight when you're actually doing the free weights version because there's a difference. There's some parts that don't quite transfer over.
Yeah, I think with machines they're very strict. Like the range of motion is like you do this one weird thing. You know what I mean? But with like say a free weight movement, it's more like there's a bit more. It just feels like it kind of makes you or more applicable to your everyday life. Like I feel like I do more of these free weights, compound movements, or like maybe even like strongman, kind of like those. Those competitions where they lift boulders and stuff like that.
Lift boulders, yeah.
yeah. It's like that's probably gonna make that guy really strong in real life. You know what I mean? Like he's gonna be able to go to the shops and like carry 100 grocery bags. But like, they literally have that in strongman, right? They have like that one competition where they just hold like these weights and they just walk with it, and that's like an exercise, or that's a competition. Compare that to like say a tricep extension, right? Which one is gonna be more applicable? And I feel like in that sense, exactly what you were saying. Thanks so much for coming through with the clutch. Those machine exercises, they feel like textbook questions because they teach you the right thing, but when push comes to shove and I need you to do it in an exam, it doesn't feel like it teaches you the necessary like skills that you might need when using that technique in the wild, and then that's kind of like what the machines do as well. But yeah. That's kind of my essence. That's kind of where my brain went.
Or what are you feeling this one, Cal?
So with this one, oh man, I'd say meh, to be honest.
Meh?
Yeah. What about you?
I'm feeling between decent and meh because, like you were saying, it's still
Practice.
at the end of the day. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
but you reckon it's meh?
Yeah, I'm gonna go a hard meh on this, just because the only redeeming factor is its practice. Like, oh yeah, it's that's the practice that you're doing. Oh wait, now I'm doubting myself.
Because I feel like it's at least as good as making notes.
Yeah,
In my
actually, I think maybe the first time you learn something, it might be necessary to do these very small exercises to kind of get you prepared. Because I guess, like, if you're, going back to that analogy, it's like, if you don't even have the muscles to begin with, you can't even jump in and do like a bench press, right? Or you can't even jump in and do free weights. It's like a bit too scary.
Sometimes you got to do the assisted pull-ups to get
sometimes
to the pull-ups.
exactly. You need those. You know what? You've convinced me. I like a decent. Yeah, I'd say decent. It's quite right in the middle.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. Glad we're in agreement.
Yeah.
Okay, next one. The king, past papers.
Man, this is the bread and butter. This one is
Bread and
it.
butter.
What do you think about this one though, Justin?
I think
Past
everyone
papers.
knows, like, past papers, best things ever. Like, they essentially exactly what you're going to be like doing in your exam. So there's like almost there's no loss in transfer of knowledge like there is with textbook questions, and it's also very efficient because the types of questions that appear in past papers will probably occur in the same frequency as your actual exam. So you won't like be putting like too much focus on like one particular topic and then it ends up being like only two marks or something in the exam.
Yes.
Like how it's distributed in past papers is probably pretty close to how it's distributed in your actual exam.
Yeah. I mean, you're replicating as close as possible the exact experience that you will be going into. And I think, once again, though, it's like past papers. It's obviously, we're just kind of like, that's what we're saying, past papers, but it's also doing the past papers in the right environment can vastly change your experience. Like, I think there are definitely, I mean, we spoke about this last time, there are definitely students out there not making the most of their past papers in the way that they're doing it. If you're doing it and you're on YouTube and you're doing it listening to music and having all these other distractions on the side, I think it's definitely not gonna kind of make the most of it. Kind of, you're not gonna get the most out of it, just in the sense where you're not recreating the exact experience. And that's kind of like the goal with past papers: recreate the exact experience, the exact pressures that you might run into in the exam, and then you kind of build yourself up to become more resilient to that pressure. Go into the exam, you can make better decisions while under pressure in that sense. But kind of, I think that's my approach. I think that's the small asterisk when we say past papers. Yes, past papers is the GOAT, you know what I mean? The best of the best, but make sure you're doing it correctly, or else you're going to be wasting them. And you might demote it down to a decent or a meh even if you don't do it right.
I 100% agree. So let's say past papers, and we're doing them in, we're going to force ourselves to do them in exam conditions as well.
Yeah.
I'm feeling like this is our first Eddie Woutier.
Yeah, it has to be.
It has to be. It's like, it's the GOAT, right?
Yeah, like I was saying, I was hyping it up too much. I can't hype it up all that much and then give it a great, you know what I mean? That'd be disrespectful. Can't be like, full, oh, it's the GOAT, bro. Great.
Second best here.
Second best. Like, what? No, it is. Like, I think it's almost universally agreed upon. Like, I don't think there's any teacher out there that's like, don't do past papers.
Do textbook questions instead.
Then, yeah, man, what is that teacher on? You know what I mean? This hypothetical teacher. We're not targeting anyone, right? This is hypothetically. I don't think anyone's crazy enough to be saying that.
Yeah, I've never heard that before.
Yeah, past papers.
Reading your own notes.
Reading your own notes.
What I'm specifically saying here is literally you're just reading it and rereading it over and over.
Yeah. Okay. I think this is setting yourself up for failure, definitely. Not catastrophic failure though. I don't think it's catastrophic failure, but it's definitely setting yourself up for some failure. Like you were saying before, the impression. I think it's when you read your own notes, you go into this. I think you go into a mode where it's like more so memorizing than actually learning. And I think once you're in that mode, you're losing out. You're definitely losing out.
And I would even throw in there that if your goal is memorizing, it's a very poor way to memorize as well.
Oh, okay.
It's just terrible all around.
Yeah. Okay. There we have it. It's just terrible. So even if you're memorizing, it's a terrible memorization tool.
It's a bad
just reading over your notes.
I probably shouldn't use the word terrible because I don't think it belongs quite in the terrible tier.
Oh, yeah.
I think it belongs.
It feels like a meh. It does feel like a meh, doesn't it?
It feels like a meh to me too.
But it kind of goes back to what we were saying before. Like, you write your notes, reading over your notes. There's definitely like a drop off in quality. Like, the making part is the important part. The reading part is probably not going to yield you much. And like I was saying before, realistically, how are you going to use your notes? I'd say if you're going through some kind of past paper and you're going through certain questions and you all of a sudden find yourself struggling with a certain topic, then I think having a set of notes that you can refer back to in that scenario is really helpful, because it's your notes, you know exactly where it is, it's summarized, you don't have to flip through like 300 pages of a textbook just to find that thing, that little topic. So I think having your notes in that scenario is very important, but just having your notes out just so you can read it all day, yeah, straight meh. Just, you're wasting your time. It's definitely a big waste of time.
Straight meh. Okay. So reading your notes, not good as a study technique. The one silver lining of this is that they are your own notes. They focus on things that you find important.
Yeah.
And they're kind of tailored towards you. So they're naturally going to be better than reading someone else's notes.
Okay, yeah. So that's the redeeming.
That's the redeeming factor, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, meh, Cal?
Yeah, I'd give it a meh. A big meh.
Okay, cool. All right, next, reading the textbook this time. So this is more assuming that, I mean, it's for any topic. Maybe it's a bit better for like topics like like chemistry or biology, where there's a lot of theory to go through. What are your thoughts, Cal?
It just hit me like, I think a lot of these study techniques, it kind of comes back to like that 80-20 rule. I find a lot of students trying to push for that last 20%. Maybe so the students that are already up in the band 6 and they're trying to really squeeze for that state rank or whatever it is, you'll find them reading textbooks. So is it the most effective thing for every student? No. But are you trying to find that last like 20%, which will, according to the 80-20 rule, which will require like a lot of effort, right, to kind of squeeze out that last 20. A lot of students tend to read multiple textbooks just to kind of like round off their understanding. But that's really like something that you're doing because you have the luxury to do so. And kind of going back to that 80-20 rule, you're going to be putting so much effort. I think it's disproportionate. I don't think it's effective for everyone. And it might even be worse. I wouldn't say it's necessarily worse than reading your own notes, just because if it's a new textbook, it might give you fresh perspective on certain things. And what I found back in high school was having multiple sources is always important. You read one textbook and you learn, let's say you learn everything out of one textbook. I think it makes you a bit biased. It makes you a bit, just like anything in life, you want to be well read. You want to have a lot of contributing sources to what you're learning and to kind of form the best opinions, I guess. So I wouldn't say it's terrible, but it's definitely not for everyone. It's one of those things not for everyone.
So where do you reckon this goes?
I'm not too sure. This is hard. I don't want to give it a terrible. I'm going to say meh. What do you think about that, Justin?
I think I agree. I think it belongs in meh.
Yeah?
I think the redeeming factor of a textbook is that it is kind of like a source of truth.
Yeah.
It's very comprehensive. Everything's going to be in there. So, yeah. But I think it's a hard meh for me.
Yeah. Context as well. Context as well. Like, I think, are you once again, if it's leading up to an exam and you're like, oh man, I need to study, and you open up a textbook and you reread it, there is no value in that. Please do not do that. Let's say you're learning a new topic and the way that your teachers taught it doesn't really sit right, or the way that you've read it in one textbook doesn't really sit right. I think it's really helpful to kind of look at other sources, to read different textbooks and stuff in that scenario, right? And like you were saying, it's super comprehensive.
Understanding, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the other thing is, like, once again, I think with reading the textbook, it precedes making notes as well. This is something that if we want you to do, we want you to do early, right? It's like I was saying, preceding making notes. What I found really helpful though was just when you read many sources, you have like a lot of different takes on a certain topic. So when you're writing your notes, it's a lot easier to not transcribe from one source, right? And like even just mixing together the different sources, it feels like your own. It feels like your own notes. I mean, it is your own. You've curated it. So I think in that sense, it helps with making notes as well.
100%.
Yeah, that's my take.
I think that's like right on the, or what is it, buzzer? Right on the button. Okay.
Did I hit the nail with that one?
Yeah, you hit the nail. That's what I was looking for.
That's it. I got you.
Okay, reading other people's notes. I'm
blasphemous.
Go out on a limb. I'm gonna say this straight terrible.
Yeah. But why? Let's just quickly run through. I think we started kind of discussing why. But
okay, so why I think it's terrible is, again, it doesn't have like reading is like just rereading is a terrible way to memorize things. But in terms of like understanding the topic, it doesn't have the advantage of a textbook being like a source of truth kind of thing. Like someone like who is very qualified has written this textbook and like gotten everything you need to know in it. It doesn't have that, and it's also not your own notes. So it focuses on what other people find important, what other people find difficult, and they've put more emphasis on things that aren't as useful for you. Which is also why, like, to touch on this, I am not a big fan of book summaries, because I think it's a very big truth that people get different things out of books. Like chapters that I've found to be like mind-blowingly like important, other people have been like, oh, this is meh, this is like obvious. Whereas chapters that I don't find that gripping at all, people are like, this is the most amazing thing I've ever felt. So I think when you summarize things, it really is like, it zones in on what you find important, what's like very useful for you.
Yeah. I think one of those like last ditch effort, like you've written nothing, so you're like begging someone, can I have your notes?
Please.
Yeah, please. But I think in that case, I guess 0 notes is going to be worse out than someone else's notes. But still, I think given what we've said, just don't do it. Just not gonna be helpful. It's not gonna be a good use of your time, you know? I think if you're in that last ditch effort kind of scenario, there are probably better things to do to make the most out of like the last 3 days that you have to study for something than to ask for someone's notes and then read them. And you already know, people always get really uncomfortable, you know, when you ask for the notes. It's like, can I have your notes? They're like, oh yeah, I'll send you when I get home. And then like, you never hear from them and you keep bugging them. You know, it's a way to ruin relationships, right? They're never going to talk to you. They're like, this guy keeps asking for notes. He's such a leech. Just make your own. You know that's what they're saying behind your back. You know what I mean? I've been in that situation because I feel like I've asked for notes and then I know these people talk behind my back. They're like, oh, this guy's an idiot. Like...
We're in agreement. Reading notes ruins friendships.
That's the takeaway. Straight terrible, man.
All right.
That's how you lose friends.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Flashcards. Let's see.
Flashcards.
I feel like this is one where I'm not as not comfortable. I'm not as acquainted with as maybe yourself.
Okay.
I haven't actually used flashcards myself, but I've seen it in use. Right, I've seen it in use, and from a lot of yeah. So the only thing I can say about this stuff is like what I've heard. So it's not really my own experience. But what do you think, Justin? What's your take on flashcards?
Big fan of flashcards.
Okay.
I use them quite a bit at uni for my computer science subjects. They are very situational though. They aren't like they aren't quite like GOAT as like past papers, for example, but they serve a very specific purpose of being the most efficient way to remember facts. Which is just some like a very simple, like you just have to memorize this like a formula or like just some like historical like statistic or like just a bit of theory, right? They are perfect for that because they force you to actually recall what the information rather than like reading it over and over, which is like a terrible way to memorize things. If you want to memorize something, use a flashcard instead. That being said, it's not good for algorithmic type knowledge. So like just say a maths problem that's more algorithmic, you have to go work through different steps to eventually get to your answer. Flashcards won't help you. For computer science, when I've tried to like apply it to more algorithmic things, like remembering it like Dijkstra's algorithm or something, straight terrible. So I found that flashcards, they're very good for like one-to-one facts. Like you have a cue and then you have the answer, and it's amazing for that.
Yeah.
But it does fall into a specific niche.
Yeah, and I think that's why, from what I've heard. Okay, so this is definitely a little Chinese whispery, but a lot of my friends who do med, have all. I mean, I think we're not in med, so it's like it's one of those things where flashcards are really good, but I think the second you step into the med bubble, every med kid is doing flashcards. Like there is no way around med. Apparently, like that's the biggest thing. There are apps to create your own flashcards. There are apps that create flashcards for the different syllabus or syllabi. What's the plural of syllabus? Syllabuses.
Syllabi.
Syllabi.
Syllabi, I like that.
Yeah. But I know like in America and stuff like that, they have apps, really, really popular apps that develop flashcards exactly for the syllabus that those students that might be using. And it's like, it's across the board because I'm assuming everyone maybe studies the same thing to get into med. So it's like, they have like these fully dedicated, really fleshed out apps just to create those flashcards, or that already have these flashcards created. And it's like every med student that I've spoken to, it's like, yeah, they swear by it. Like it seems like there is no way around it. And it's like you were saying, that's kind of the nature of what med is more of as a degree, as a profession, or as a line of work. It's not really as say in computer science, algorithmic, right? So I think it's much more popular in that end.
The sheer volume of like information you need to learn in like med is like insane.
Exactly.
And like the votes are in, they've tested all of the memorization techniques, and the winner is like clearly flashcards or like variants of flashcards.
Yeah, I think it's what is it? Trial tested. It's a tested method. You know what I mean? If you like you were saying, the sheer volume of what you have to learn there is just simply means you cannot be fooling around using a subpar method of memorization, because then you would not make it out of there. So it seems that if you want to make it through med, you have to be using the best of the best in terms of memorization tools. But it is a memorization tool, and it might not be for everyone.
All right, I'm happy to chuck this in grade. I don't think it's quite past papers level, but
yeah,
I think it's pretty good.
Basically, right up there.
All right, next, watching YouTube videos, and I've got my boy Eddie Wu here.
So does he automatically go into Eddie Wu category?
Hot take: I do not believe watching Eddie Wu videos is Eddie Wu tier.
Whoa, dude! Do not send this to Eddie Wu, bro. He's not gonna be very proud.
Look, like watching YouTube videos,
Yeah.
they fall into the same category, I think, as reading the textbook. In that it's good for like filling in things that you don't understand. I think there's a bunch more benefits, to be honest, though, in that its videos are much more engaging. People can explain their thought process. They tend to be a bit more condensed. You can find exactly what you're looking for quite easily on YouTube. So, but like it's not a great way to be studying. If you've got an exam coming up in a week or so, you shouldn't be spending all of your time watching YouTube videos.
Yeah. This is interesting because I keep seeing like this trend of people slowly understanding that education is like an archaic thing, like or the philosophy of education is extremely archaic and it's something that we know very little about. But like the whole what's your take on this? This is kind of a bit of a tangent, Justin. But what's your take on like people saying I'm a visual learner, I'm a this learner, I'm a kinesthetic learner or whatever? What's your take on that, Justin?
I am very strongly in the camp that that is fake news.
Right. Because I think that as well. Yeah.
I think the underlying processes of how people learn are like relatively similar. You might be more comfortable in one method than another, but I
Yeah.
don't think that those learning styles have like much.
They can't define
to
you,
it.
right? That's the thing.
Yeah,
I think it's so silly to think, and I think this is something that you still sometimes hear. I think slowly it's being phased out, but you still sometimes hear people say, "Oh, I'm a this type of learner, I'm a that type of learner," and like I think the dangerous part of that is no one is one type of learner, so you're already cutting yourself out. You're kind of like losing out on the fact that I'm a visual learner, so I'm not going to read a textbook. But reading the textbook might be important. It might be that last bit to help round off your understanding. But I think everyone's a bit of something, and like you were saying, I think some people are more comfortable in certain aspects. So I think for me, I'm definitely more comfortable watching a YouTube video, but it doesn't mean that that's the only thing that I ever do when I'm learning stuff, right? It definitely is something that I find very helpful, but it doesn't define me. And it means that I can't just dismiss reading a textbook. I can't just dismiss doing practice questions or whatever like that. So I think watching YouTube videos, yeah, you kind of summarized it perfectly. There are a lot of good things going for it, like reading your textbook, but it's a lot more casual, condensed, a bit more engaging depending on who you're watching, and straight to the point. Sometimes, if you find the right video, sometimes it's very straight to the point. It's an effective use of your time in that sense, but it's not something that you should be doing. It's not gonna, I guess, help you get out of that hole. If you're stuck in a hole and you're trying to study for an exam and you're panicking, I don't think that might be the best use of your time once again. But yeah, personally though, I do enjoy it. I do enjoy watching YouTube videos a lot, and I found a lot of utility out of that.
So what do you reckon it slots in here?
I think for me, a decent. It's for me decent meh. You know, like a light decent, a strong meh maybe. What about you, Justin?
Yeah, I think I'm happy with that. I think I'm happy to put it in decent because
Really? Okay.
I feel like I get more value out of watching YouTube videos than straight reading the textbook. I think they have a very good place in someone's study routine, in that it can really clear up. I think it's probably the best way to clear up misunderstandings that you might have.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to put it in decent.
Yeah.
But again, it's
Something
very
about
situational.
Yeah, it's situational. There's a bit of context to it, but something about it, like just YouTube. It's like not open source. I know that's the wrong word, but it's like it's to anyone. Anyone can be a creator, and I think sometimes with textbooks, it's an ultimate truth, but sometimes that truth is from someone qualified, someone really smart. With YouTube videos, you might find someone explaining something more on your level, like explain to me like I'm a 5-year-old kind of thing. So it might kind of speak to you, touch you a bit deeper than what a textbook might. That's kind of like how I see it.
All right. Then the next one, mnemonics and acronyms. So you always hear people like, and I think I'm kind of just grouping a whole bunch of these like Sokotoa for remembering the sign ratios, or
Yeah.
like ooh, sing a song to like remember something.
Yep. Or like have a nice rhyme or
Have a
whatever
nice
it
rhyme,
is.
yeah.
Yeah. Pop culture reference, whatever it is.
I'm
I
gonna
like
say
them.
I don't like these.
Oh, really?
I'm gonna go first, and then
Yeah.
we'll see
Yeah.
afterwards.
Let's hear it.
But I feel like they definitely have its place, and it's like it's not wrong to use these because
Yeah.
they can be useful. But I think they're generally a just weaker method of memorization than flashcards. Like if you want to memorize something, instead of putting in that effort to like turn it into a song or like a rhyme or something, right? You should instead just make some flashcards and you will remember these for sure, rather than like, oh, maybe I'll remember these using my cool mnemonic.
Yeah. I get you.
But there are like some mnemonics that I think that are already in like very common use
Yeah.
because they're just so powerful. Like Sokotoa, that's a big one, right? I'm not against that one because it's already so well vetted.
Yeah.
So many people have taken it up because it's a really effective one. But I think sitting there and trying to come up with your own mnemonics is a wasted effort.
Okay. No, you're right. I see it. I think you put it perfectly. It goes into the fact that like when you're learning something new, if you're memorizing in the stuff that we're talking about, say in maths, in physics, in more of those type of subjects, right? I think you catch my drift when I say that. But in those type of subjects, you're trying to learn things and you're not trying to memorize. So memorizing you're already losing out. Like if I teach you a new equation and you're memorizing the equation, and that's your first instinct, right? I think you're losing out already. Instead of learning that equation, right? There's always so much to an equation. There's always so much to understand about something that if you're resorting to a mnemonic, an acronym to just memorize, I can see that you've lost a bit of value from that. But like you were saying, there are some mnemonics out there, some acronyms out there that just exist, and I think that we naturally gravitate towards. And I think it's a testament to how effective they can be. Right? They're not the best, but I think the fact that there are so many out there is a bit of a sign that it does work. It definitely does work. It's not flashcards. It's in terms of superiority, but like I'd say it definitely works. But kind of coming back to what I was saying before, just if I'm trying to teach you something and have you appreciate an equation, I've always found that students can remember the equation if they appreciate where it comes from, or if they know where it comes from, a lot better than students who just memorize it using like a detached, disassociated like mnemonic or something like that. So if I teach you, well, I'm trying to think of an example, but I might not have an example off the top of my head. But if I'm teaching you something and like I might show you the derivation to help you appreciate where it comes from, as opposed to you come up with like this rhyme that just helps you memorize it. I think appreciating it naturally is a little better in that case. But yeah,
I feel you.
Still a good memorization tool. Not the best, but yeah.
I'm torn between meh and decent.
Yeah.
Do you want to tie break that, Kel?
I'd say meh in our line of work. You know what I mean? In what we do. I think when you kind of switch gears to a subject where it's more volume of information, like we were talking about, like med or maybe even bio or something like that, right? I think those memorization tools they kind of increase in utility a little bit. But for the stuff that we're talking about, I'll just drop it down to a meh.
I agree with that assessment. All right, next, the Pomodoro Technique. So to explain this one, it's basically you just have like a timer set to 25 minutes. And then once that goes, and you work with no distraction for those 25 minutes. And then you take a break and then you set another like block of time where you're going to be working. And I'm a big fan of this one, to be honest, because it's a study technique that can be used in conjunction with like every single one of these ones, because it's not really an active thing that you're doing.
Specific.
It's not specifically something you're doing. It's more of a environmental thing that you're setting up. And I don't think it's that big of a deal to follow exactly what, like, or the exact timings of like 25 minutes and then a 5-minute break or whatever. It's more the mindset behind it, which I think is really powerful. And it's that you should be setting distinct blocks of time where you're setting aside to completely focus, rather than just working willy-nilly, like, oh, I'm going to sit down and just going to do like work for a little while. You're half focusing, you're half not. Having this concrete time where it's like, okay, I'm going to be doing work for this set amount of time, and I'm not going to be distracted during it, and then I'll have a break, and then I'm going to set another set of time. And being that concrete with it, you can even say like, today I did 3 Pomodoros, or today I did 2 Pomodoros. Tomorrow I can go for 1 more. It makes things very measurable. It makes things very concrete. And I think it stops you from kidding yourself into thinking like, oh, did I do 3 hours of work, or did I do 4 hours of work? When in fact you really only got 1 hour of focus work done that day.
Yeah. No, that's true. Like, that's so important. Just having that, going through the Pomodoro Technique, having it concrete, like, I've done this much today, it just helps like it helps you feel accomplished, right? Feels like you're getting a lot of work done. And I've always found like a lot of the really successful students, it's something that they did very early on. I remember talking to a lot of friends from like selective schools and stuff like that back in high school. I didn't do it back in high school, but they were already doing that stuff back in high school. They already picked up on it so early. And so, I mean, I've only picked it up like very recently. And I've spoken about this before, but I use that Forest app. It's a very similar app. And it's similar in a sense where it's kind of like Pomodoro. You set your own timer, but similar to what you were saying, you don't need to be like 25 minutes and that has to be a thing. You can kind of change it around. You can go for 40 minutes if you want. You can go for 15 if you want. But yeah, I think it's such a universal tool, and I think it's something that everyone can like bring on board in terms of their workflow. So yeah, I think this one's got a lot of stuff going for it, to be honest, the Pomodoro Technique.
This one's quite powerful.
Yeah.
All right. What do you reckon this guy goes?
I feel like it deserves the Eddie Wu, but I don't know, like, I don't know. You gotta. I'll send it over to you for this one.
I'm happy to put it in Eddie Wu, just because it's so flexible that it's like a why not kind of thing, right? There's
True.
essentially no downside to using it.
Yeah. Yeah, true. Yeah. I like how it's so universal. Everyone can do it, you know. I'm trying to think back to, because the first time I was told about it, I felt very against it. I was like, what? Lame. Why do I need to do 25 minutes? But back then I was already a very like diligent student. So I was already studying for hours on end anyways. And it was very hard and someone suggested, oh, you should do the Pomodoro Technique. It's like, 25 minutes? What do you mean? I'm smashing out hours of work at a time, but I don't think it's sustainable. That's the thing. Because I couldn't sustain studying for hours on end throughout my whole life, throughout all of uni or whatever. And I think the Pomodoro Technique is just something to kind of build habits and build something a bit more sustainable that you can hold on to for much longer, I think. But yeah.
And like what we were saying before,
it deserves it up
if you've got a monster of a attention span, right? You can make your Pomodoro like sessions an hour long.
Exactly.
Like an hour and a half.
No one's saying you got to do 25. Exactly. That's right.
It's more about setting
boundaries
for like, okay, during this time, I'm only going to be in a deep state of studying, and also making your studying more measurable. It's those principles that we're focusing on rather than the specifics of the Pomodoro Technique.
Yeah. And I like how it's like, it separates, you know, like you can switch gears. I think being able to switch gears is very important. Like, And just having those small cues, like how we were talking about before. I remember you were saying you used to drink like Red Bull and have that as your cue. Like, okay, I'm in that mode now. So like starting the Pomodoro is that cue, and sometimes you just need that little bit of a kick so that you can kind of get into the right mindset, and then start studying. But yeah, true. I do right.
Just calling me out on my caffeine habits.
Oh, I think it's helpful. I think it's helpful. That was not shade.
True.
That was
true.
respect. That was respect. That was not shade at all.
Okay. The next is the Feynman Technique. So this one will probably require a bit of explaining to the viewers.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
This one is basically when you've got a topic that you want to like test your knowledge on, essentially, you get it out a sheet of paper and you write down everything you would know and how you would explain it to a 5-year-old, essentially. And I think I was reading like Richard Feynman didn't actually use this technique or something, but it's like named after him.
Oh, it's his name after him. I thought
Yeah,
he was
so-
like a scam. I thought you were trying to say he's a scam or something. Like
Oh no.
he was just shilling out this method and he didn't even do it himself or something.
Um, but I think this is one of those techniques where it's valuable in a real life context, but to be honest, for the context of studying for an exam, like we've kind of set up here, it's actually not that good. There are much better things that you could be doing, because what's powerful about this technique is that if it's a topic that doesn't have any exam questions or doesn't have ways that you can actively test yourself, then yeah, like doing this free recall, this free form, like I'm going to write down everything I know and
Yeah.
then try to fill in the blanks afterwards, like see what's missing and then going back and fixing it. That's really good if you don't have an actual end goal and you just want to say that, okay, I have a good understanding of this topic. But I think it's a bit inefficient in an academic context because you do have just much more powerful things to work with, which are
Yeah.
actual questions.
Yeah, that's true. I think, like you're saying, in our context as students, most of your subjects that you do, you have past papers for. So there isn't really a need to kind of build yourself your own past papers, which is what I'm kind of getting the vibe from. This is kind of like making your own quiz and recall. It feels like a more comprehensive way of writing notes, though. So it might be. Helpful
So that's not quite. It's more like you're just testing yourself on everything you know. So there's no questions or anything. It's just you get out a blank sheet of paper, and then you're like, okay, how am I gonna explain? I don't know. Subatomic particles to like
Right.
to a 5-year-old,
Okay.
and then you write out everything you know. You kind of look at it and like, am I missing anything? If you are, I think it's quite visible, and then you go back and like fill in the blanks of what you're missing in your head.
Yeah. Huh. Weird. I've never used this myself, but I feel like it's one of those things where once in a while you just do it naturally, right? Because I feel like once in a while I've definitely like, just like it's like I've had an idea in my head and it's just like, oh, it's going crazy. Like there's too much information, so I just write it out, or I just kind of like have it on paper, and then I kind of explain it on paper. But this kind of feels very similar, or not similar, but very much in the same realm as the next thing on the list there with teaching other people. Because it's like, I see, if you're going to write out how to teach someone, why not go off and actually just teach someone?
Actually teach someone.
Yeah. But
Okay.
yeah,
So what do we
it
want?
helps though. It helps.
What do we want to throw this guy? I don't think it's terrible.
Yeah,
I'm
I'd say
torn
meh.
between decent and meh. Meh?
Okay.
I'm happy with meh.
No, actually, we have making notes up in decent. I feel like this is along the lines of that, of making notes, because you're just writing stuff out. Yeah, I'd say decent.
Okay, let's chuck it in decent.
Yeah.
All right. Next is teaching others, and I feel like you have a lot of experience with this one as a student
Yeah.
because you taught me all of physics in year 12.
I think that's kind of how it started. That's how the career started. I was doing my apprenticeship in year 12, teaching people physics. I found it very enjoyable though. I think it's a rewarding experience. Like if you take everything away from it, it's still a rewarding experience. To be able to help your friends out and at the same time help yourself out. It's like win-win. You know what I mean? Like I'm getting so much out of it. My friends are getting so much out of it. We're just carrying each other to the top, right? And it just felt like I like it when I get to study with other people as well. So teaching others was always very fun. We'd be at the library and everyone would just be around the table and I'd just like help explain stuff to my friends and to you guys or whatever. I think this was for me. I'm scared my opinion's very biased, you know what I mean? But for me, this might be for me like one of the most important things I've ever done, teaching other people. Actually, no. Comparing it to past papers, maybe not as important, but it's right up there. It definitely is right up there. I've had so many experiences where, even throughout uni, it's like if I learned like for say a certain semester, I'm trying to really consolidate everything I've learned from that subject. And then I meet up with the boys and then I teach them. I try to teach them, explain it to other people. I find myself learning so much as I'm explaining to someone else. Like the things just fall into place as I'm explaining it to someone else. And then after explaining, I'm like, so that's what it means. And then I'm like, okay, cool. Thanks. You know what? And then I just like kind of go back to my own thing. But I find this one of the most important things, to be honest.
I agree. Like and after I started tutoring, I noticed it a lot more as well. When you need to teach something, the level of understanding is like one level higher. It forces you to like bring your understanding to like to be much more comprehensive.
Yeah.
And again, it's like forcing yourself to like reword things in so that you can actually like say it right. It tests your knowledge and it really consolidates everything. And like you were saying, it's a good thing to like help others, right? Makes you feel good, makes them feel good. All around.
Exactly. Instead of destroying relationships, you make new friends, right?
Yeah.
You're making friends.
Reading other people's notes destroys relationships.
Yeah.
Teaching others makes new relationships.
Yeah. So I totally rate, definitely.
And I feel like in year 12, there sometimes is like an attitude of like, oh, I'm out on my own, like
us against them
kind of thing. Like, I'm going to like look out for myself kind of thing.
Or every man for himself. Sorry, that's even better.
Every man for himself. I don't think that's a good place to be in. I think teach other people if you're one of the better students, and that'll help you as well.
Yeah.
Not just in school, but also in life.
Oh, yeah, 100%, bro. I don't know, maybe... I think every student knows that, like, you know, even if you get a high rank, the cohort has some impact on how well you do at the end. So, you know, I know, like, after the trial, everyone kind of gets together because, you know, you're not fighting for ranks anymore. But if you can do that a bit earlier, I think it's a good sign. And that's the other thing. It's like, if you're self-conscious, if your measure of how well you're doing is by seeing how well other people are doing, I just don't feel like you're working hard enough. You're probably you're spending your energy in the wrong place, right? Instead of spending that energy worrying about how other people might catch up, just work on yourself, right? Focus on yourself. And if you're really, you know, putting in the work, you don't have to worry about those other people, and you might have the capacity to actually go out and help people. And like I said, it's really self-serving. It sounds like you're doing it for other people, but really it's for yourself. I feel like you learn the most out of everyone when you're teaching other people. So,
100%.
It could be even selfish.
I feel like for from the benefit of just learning, it's a decent, but I think with the added benefit of just like nurturing relationships and stuff, I think that pushes
goes up to a great.
Yeah.
I like a great, yeah.
Right.
I would enjoy a great. That's good.
All right, let's chuck that there. Okay, next one. It's a bit interesting. It's a technique that I've come across before, like in YouTube videos. Like a lot of productivity YouTubers talk about it, and it's making quiz style notes. So instead of when you're writing notes, instead of writing down information, you write down questions instead. So I don't know, what's a random fact from physics, Cal? Do you mind helping me out here?
Oh, let's say, man, do you need any fact? Just any fact will work?
Any fact will work, yeah.
Oh, man. I don't know where to go with this.
All right, let's say Isaac Newton invented gravity.
Oh, okay.
He didn't invent gravity, guys, but let's just say that's the fact I'm trying to memorize, even though it's false. Instead of writing down Isaac Newton invented gravity, you would write down who invented gravity, and then
big brain plays.
and then put somewhere else like Isaac Newton, right? So that when you go back and study your notes, they're in question format. So that forces you to recall things rather than just rereading your notes.
I think that's actually what I think a lot of students already do with so in physics specifically in the sciences, what students used to do, I think students don't do as much anymore, but what students used to do is write syllabus stop points, and that would be like kind of like this. It's you take the syllabus stop point and you treat it as the quiz question, and you write information underneath that. So the syllabus stop point might be like students need to evaluate like the evidences that contributed to the Big Bang Theory or something like that, right? And then they kind of answer it underneath, and then they go to the next dot point, answer it underneath. And I think they do this for everything, and it's really good because it's the most comprehensive set of notes that you can probably create for yourself that is relevant to your exam. Everything that could be in the exam is going to be mentioned in the syllabus. So so I think it's something that a lot of students might do without even kind of realizing these quiz style notes. But I think it's really popular. It's a very popular thing.
So from personal experience, I found these to be a bit of a pain and gave up after a little while. So
is the pain in writing having to come up with the questions though?
Yes.
Yeah.
It adds a lot of friction to the note making process, which is why I kind of abandoned it. I would imagine that if you did slug your way through it, it would be quite useful.
Yeah.
But I kind of didn't feel like it was too valuable at that point, and I gave up on it. But people talk about it a lot.
Yeah. So I think in that sense, like I used to do it, but only if the dot points, if I had a set of syllabus dot points anyway. So like the questions, I didn't really have to come up myself. I already have it, right? So, okay, cool. I just need to answer it. So in that sense, I think it's pretty helpful. But I think what you just touched on, the friction of writing notes is very important. Sometimes I feel like some of the meh things or the terrible things that we've already mentioned, they're terrible. They're not that great. But I feel like a lot of them have a very low friction, so you can kind of get started with them very easily. I don't know if you, because I've found myself, I found myself sometimes like struggling to study for like a certain subject very early on as well. And so, I have a lot of time. I'm not really pressed for time, but there's a lot of friction. I don't want to, I'm Siebes, like I don't want to study. But what I found was I started writing notes for that subject, and the first few pages would just be me transcribing. Because transcribing has such a low friction. It's so easy to do. I don't have to really put much effort into it. So the first few pages of me writing the notes for that subject it might be transcribing. I might just be copying word for word from the slides or something like that. But then like a few hours in or a day or two in, and I'm starting to kind of write my own notes. I'm starting to reword myself. But I kind of had to use that transcribing method as a way into the study, if you kind of get what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've ever done this.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, to get the ball rolling. I've found that helpful because so even though it's like a really crappy method, it's still something I do once in a while, and that kind of comes back to the whole friction thing. When you have a method that is so good but then so difficult to get started, you're gonna get nowhere anyways, right? So sometimes you gotta pick your battles in that sense. And so the quiz styled notes, I see where you're coming from when you say not that effective, in a sense where a lot of students might find themselves just giving up like an hour in. They're like, man, stuff this. I can't write my own questions, man. What the hell? So yeah.
So I'm torn between decent and meh. How do you feel, Cal?
I'd say, yeah, that's so true. Let's give it a decent.
Decent?
If, with the asterisks, if, one of those things, if you can come across a set of questions that are already designed for you, so you don't really have to put that effort in, which I think some subjects actually do. I know in a lot of the science subjects, there are a lot of booklets, a lot of textbooks designed this for the students as well, and teachers tend to hand them out. But like they will do what I said. They take the syllabus dot points and then they kind of turn it into a booklet of questions instead, and then you just got to fill it out. And that turns into a nice set of notes for yourself. So they're not like actual questions; they're more so just like queries, so that you can kind of like explain what you understand about that topic. And that's kind of like what we're talking about, anyways. But yeah, in that sense, not too bad.
Cool. Almost there. We've gone up to quiz and recall, and this is Cal Newport, one of my favorite authors. And what this technique essentially is you do a quiz, a past paper, or whatever, just like some sort of quiz, and then you mark everything you've done, and then you redo it, but only the questions you do wrong, and you repeat that process over and over. And I've found this to be probably the most powerful like studying technique I've come across, because it's even like it works in conjunction with past papers, which is already a GOAT technique, right? One of the best techniques, but it also builds on that, in that once you've gone through the past paper, and you're going to redo the questions, but only the ones you've got wrong. So you're being extremely time efficient by working on your weaknesses.
Yeah, something that we do with all our students now, and I think it's something that I only started to do when I started to teach maths. A bit weird at first, because I think some students might be against it in their head. They might just be like, oh, I don't want to redo a paper. I've already done it. Like, I already read over the answers. But you'd be surprised as to how much you're losing out just by reading solutions and then moving on. And you'd be surprised at how much you gain just from redoing the paper, but just redoing those last few ones that you got wrong. And yeah, I think both of us will agree. It's just something we found so much success in for a lot of our students. I don't do this myself. I haven't actually had a chance. I don't have any subjects left where I can actually do past papers anymore, but haven't had a chance to do it myself. But yeah, a lot of the students have just found so much success in it.
All right. I'm going to put this in Eddie Wu tier. Is that good for you?
Yeah. This is definitely up there. I think there's just too much going for it, and there's so little against it. There's no reason as to, like we were saying before, there's no reason for you not to do it. It's like, just do it, right?
People have an aversion. Like, it's kind of the opposite of this. I think we're kind of seeing like a pattern of the things that are difficult, the things that make you uncomfortable, are also the things that are the most effective, and the things that are easy, the things that you feel very comfortable doing, they're not very effective methods.
Wow, look at this like distribution.
Yeah, it's almost a normal distribution.
Almost a normal distribution. All right, let's put pseudo studying at great, just to round it out. Let's make sure we get a nice normal distribution.
Right. I've put pseudo studying in here, and I threw this one just like for the sake of like, in case we didn't have a terrible.
Yeah, just so we can dunk on it, just straight talk all the trash.
Yeah, straight up. This is like the punching bag for this episode.
Yeah.
So pseudo studying, what I mean by this is when you're not putting in your full focus into studying, you're kind of like, ooh, I'll do a bit of work while watching Netflix at the same time, or while chatting with friends or whatever. So very low intensity studying.
I think it's just something. Whenever I hope whoever's watching this just takes all of this with a grain of salt. You know, it's what I've come to realize. Like, now that we're ending off with pseudo studying, is just that no matter how insignificant, everything that we have there has a place in your workflow, but obviously not to the same degree. Like, you want to be focusing most of your energy on Eddie Wu stuff, on great stuff. Eddie Wu being the Eddie Wu tier stuff, right? But you don't want to. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be pseudo studying at all. Like, I feel like there are sometimes things out there that you can do while doing other things, right? But you got to be so honest with yourself. If you're trying to learn new things, then don't kid yourself. You can't watch YouTube while learning something new. If it's something that you're repeating over, or something you're doing out of repetition, I feel like once in a while you can kind of get away with pseudo studying, and it's one of those things where pseudo studying might be your gateway into full studying. You know, if you find it really hard to kind of get into the zone, sometimes you might need a little like a palate cleanser, or maybe like a little entree, right? So like do some kind of work that might not really be work, but kind of get you in the zone. So there are certain situations. I think the context is always important in this case, but I think at the end of the day, it is not something that you want to be doing. It's inefficient, a waste of your time. But yeah, you know, just take everything with a grain of salt. I think that's a big takeaway here.
I've got a bit more of a hard line take on this issue than you do.
Yeah.
And I think people should never pseudo study.
Okay.
My reasoning for that, I shouldn't say everyone. I think people who are similar to me never ever pseudo studying,
Yeah.
and I would consider like myself to not have the strongest willpower. I can't just like force myself to like do something. I need to stack the odds like for myself,
Yeah.
rather than against myself. And I feel like having that gray area of pseudo studying between play and work allows me to slide out of work and into play a lot more
that's
easily.
true. That's true.
When I have a hard division between I'm playing right now or I'm working right now, that tends to work much better for me.
Yeah, I think what I really meant was probably just, yes, it works for certain people. Some people out there. I'm not, because I don't want to come across as like, or we are the absolute gospel. You know what I mean? We're out here spitting facts, like being the absolute truth. It's hard to be the absolute truth. I think everything is always so situational. But these are general truths, things that you should gravitate towards. You know, those higher tier methods that we've listed up there. But yeah, you got to be honest. That's what I was saying. Like if you want to do pseudo studying, if that's something that you might dabble in once in a while, you got to be honest with yourself. And I guess now I'm thinking in this context, because we're talking about exam preparation. Okay, probably not something you want to ever do actually. But outside, you know, like sometimes you might be like, I find myself like at work or something like that. You know, if you're at work and you're just doing things, you're not studying, right? Multitasking might not be too bad. But if your goal is to actually study for an exam, yeah, you know, I'll run it back a bit. Shouldn't probably be doing it at all. But yeah.
All right, chill. Then I think we're in agreement. This is terrible.
Too easy, yeah. Terrible from the moment it started, right? As a studying technique.
All right, I'm pretty happy with this distribution. It looks quite good.
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad.
All right.
So just try to gravitate towards the higher tiers, and I think you'll be good. You'll be doing good.
All right, let's finish off this episode with our song recommendations for the week. Do you have yours, Cam? Because I've got mine.
Already? Okay, you got to start.
Blackpink's new album, the album. It's called The Album, and my favorite song of the album, I think it's the best song of the album, is You Never Know. So Blackpink,
Thanks
You
for
Never
that.
Know.
I like that. Writing on that, because I've also been listening to the same album. Also check out Love to Hate Me. That's it.
Also a banger, an absolute
Also
banger.
a banger. super. I love it. Just if you're like a hip hoppy kind of guy, you know, you kind of like the trap beats. I think straight banger, that one.
You see me at karaoke, I'm gonna be singing that song.
Exactly. I've been studying the lyrics. I got him.
All right. Thank you, Cal, and thank you for everyone for listening.
Cool.